Hey YouTube, it's Matthew Decker with Leveraged Wealth Management. Today's video is going to bring out tons of haters, and that makes me feel so good because I love it when I do controversial videos. So here we go. So we've been getting a lot of business owner clients come to us and ask us questions about, what type of savings they should be doing towards retirement. And one of the things that we see most often with small business owners is big SEP IRAs. And so we had a client a couple weeks ago come to us and say, hey, should I be maxing out my SEP IRA, which gives you really high deferral limits? Should I be maxing out my SEP IRA? Or, I've seen some of these videos that you've done on Index Universal Life. Is that going to be the better option? And so what we did is we did an analysis for that particular client based on their age, their income, and how much income they were hoping to generate. And it was really interesting. And so I want to share that with you today. So I'm going to share my screen and just go through exactly kind of the step-by-step process that we looked at when we compared a SEP IRA to an Index Universal Life Insurance policy. And I think you're going to be surprised. So I've obviously dummied up this information, and this is a planning tool that we use for our financial planning clients. But he and his wife were 50. These are not their birthdays. I just dummied the info. So they were both 50 years old. And the idea was, how much income can we generate at age 65? That was kind of the bogey that we were looking at. They were making around $300,000 a year, which does give them the maximum deferral limit in a SEP IRA. In 2021, it was $58,000. And so I'll show you that. And so what we did with this particular client and with this software, we can forecast Social Security, we can forecast, 401ks, IRAs, retirement income, and it does a really good job of building financial plans. But I basically stripped everything out of this. So there's no Social Security estimates, there's no other assets. It's simply just a side-by-side comparison of a SEP account, and then we'll look at an index life illustration. But here's the SEP, $58,000 a year. We're going to retire at 65, they're 50, which means we have 15 years of generating returns and then turning this into an income stream. So the idea is how much income can we generate in the SEP versus the IUL. And so we knew that they were deferring $58,000 a year. And since this is a tax-deferred vehicle, we do have to account for taxes. Now, they're making $300,000 a year, which puts them in the 24% bracket. At the upper limit, that's not the taxes that they're paying if you look at the total income, but that's the bracket that they're in, 24% bracket. And so what we had to do was start with the indexed life policy. And so let me show you what we came up with. So we took that $58,000 and we netted out the taxes. So instead of deferring $58,000 a year into a SEP, we're taking $44,000 after taxes and paying it into an index life insurance policy with a minimum death benefit designed for maximum cash and income. And we're doing that for 15 years. And then we're just simply working backwards because we know what we have to spend, $44,000 a year. And so the idea is how much income can we generate in year 16 indexed for inflation at 2.25? That's kind of the scenario that we ran this through. And so we can get $62,000 a year indexed for inflation at 2.25, essentially for life, tax-free, with no market risk, right? Because this is a fixed contract. And so the worst that you can do in any given year from a market standpoint is 0%. Do you still have to pay fees? Yes, you do. And so if you do get a 0%, can your account value go backwards? Yes, it can. It can go backwards by the amount of the fees that you would pay out of your account. But it is a fixed contract. You're not going to get a negative 10%. That doesn't exist in this product. 0 is the worst that you can do from an investment standpoint. And then there's some caps. Some options are uncapped with participation rates. That's not what the purpose of this video is. But we go out to life expectancy. Let's call it 90. We put in $661,000 over those 15 years. We took out $2 million tax-free with no market risk, and we've still got $1 million left over in the form of a death benefit for beneficiaries. And at life expectancy, we have $727,000 in cash inside this contract. Okay. So we know what this can do from an income standpoint. This is the indexed policy. The company doesn't matter because there are several companies that could look like this. So $62,000 a year, indexed for inflation at 2.25 for life. At life expectancy, let's call it 90, we end up with $1 million in death benefit for beneficiaries. We still have $727,000 left over in cash at life expectancy, total payout of $2 million. And so the idea is when we go back to our planning software, how much income can that SEP generate us if we're deferring $58,000 a year? Now, the difference here with the SEP is when we do go to take income out of this contract, you're going to pay taxes on it, number one. And then number two, it's going to be invested in the market. So there is going to be some market volatility risk. And so I want to show you basically where we ended up with this SEP IRA in terms of mirroring the income out of the life insurance contract. And so what we do is we run 1,000 iterations of different market trials, market scenarios, everything from Great Depression scenarios to really good market performance, 10, 20, 40% in back-to-back years. So really bad markets, really good markets. And then the idea is how many of those 1,000 test trials, how many of those 1,000 scenarios generate the same amount of income as the indexed life policy? Or another way to say it would be, what's the likelihood of generating this income out of the SEP if you invest in the market? And it's 42%. So, and I'll show you that here. We'll go to this little what if worksheet. So 42% of the time, we're able to generate the same $62,000 a year indexed for inflation at 2.25 if we invest in the SEP and we're using an equity growth account during the accumulation phase, so for the first 15 years, and then we're using a balanced portfolio once we get into retirement. And so we're adjusting the risk down once we start taking money out, but we're basically being as risky as we can be in the accumulation phase, which is what we're going to have to do to try to match that income. So 42% of the time, or there's a 42% probability of success of generating the exact same amount of income, $62,000 net of taxes, net of fees, indexed for inflation. And so you may be looking at this, and this is why I say the haters are going to come out in this video, because you may be looking at this 42% and saying, well, yeah, but you're assuming a fixed rate of return on the life insurance policy, which we are. We were assuming a 6% rate of return, or not a rate of return, a 6% credit. So a 6% credit on the life insurance policy. And yet, in this equity portfolio in the SEP, you're assuming, what's the rate of return? Well, I'll show you. So we can go in here because again, there's thousands of trials. So we can pull any individual trial and show you exactly what the returns were for that trial. So this is the median trial, the 500th. If we go over here to 1,000, it's the worst. If we go all the way up to the left-hand side here, if we move the cursor to the left, we're getting into the best trials. So let's start in the middle, and you can see some of these returns. So we start off with a negative 1%, 10%, 19%, 32%, 10%, 30%, negative 3%. So the first, 6 years or so, these are some really healthy returns. And this is totally random, right? We're not plugging in these numbers. This is just the simulation that's run behind the scenes. Our biggest loss is 15 years down the road, negative 20%, but we've got a 22, a 20, and a 14 before that big loss. And this particular sequence, this median trial, the 500th trial in this set of 1,000, you run out of money. You run out of money before life expectancy, and there's literally nothing left over, negative $5,000 left over at the end of the plan. And so to me, this is crazy. We'd have to go up to probably like the 400th trial. We'd have to make, so there's 600 trials before this 400th one that are failing. So in this 400th trial, we do leave money on the table at the end of the plan, $123,000. But what's interesting is what do we have to get to leave behind $1 million? Because that's what the death benefit was leaving behind in the current. So let's just right about here actually. So the 349th trial leaves behind $927 in future dollars. And that's about where the index life policy was, $957,000 in future dollars left over at the end of the plan, $727,000 in cash. And so to me, the reason that we really like index life policies for income is because look at how many other market scenarios, hypothetical returns, sequences of returns, look at how many of them don't beat the index life policy. There's about 650 of them that do not beat the indexed life insurance policy. And the indexed life insurance policy is a fixed asset. So we're having to take a whole heck of a lot of risk in order to beat the index life policy from an income standpoint and from a remainder value standpoint. And the reason we have to take a whole heck of a lot more risk is because no matter how you invest, you're going to have years where you experience a loss. So we've got a -22, a -10, -4 in this particular trial, a -11. This isn't a ton of market losses. I mean, there's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I guess this one's 6, 7, 8. There's 8 market losses out of a 35, 40-year retirement. That's not very many. 8 market losses. And yet, just having those 8 years where the market doesn't cooperate makes it so that the life policy is essentially outpacing your investment portfolio. And so this is why we love index life for tax efficient income. I'm being very specific with my words. We love it for tax efficient income because if you're trying to generate income, net of fees, net of taxes, indexed for inflation, you have to take way more risk in the market to generate the same results that you'd have to generate with the life policy. Now, again, you're thinking, yeah, but that index life policy was not assuming these variable returns like this. You know, there was no up and down. It was just a flat 6%. And that's true. So what I'd like to do is show you this backcasting tool that we like to use. And so the way this tool works is we get to plug in what index options we're using. And then it runs essentially the same type of random trials. It shows you how every single policy could have performed going all the way back to 2004 and running scenarios every single day that the market was open. And it uses the index options that we've chosen. And then it just tells you, well, how many of those policies performed at a 6% or higher or a 7% or higher. It gives us those statistics. And so this is really cool. Let's just go through it one at a time. So the likelihood of getting a 0% return in any given year based on data that goes all the way back to 2004, the likelihood of getting a 0% is 6.86. So 6.8% of the policies that have existed in any given year hit a 0% floor. Greater than or equal to 3. So how many? What's the likelihood of getting 3% or better? 75% of the time you're getting 3% or better. What's the likelihood of getting 6 or better? 53% of the time you're getting 6 or better. And if you add all of that up together, we can say, okay, well, what is the likelihood of getting a specific rate of return? Say 6%. What's the likelihood of getting a 6% rate of return inside this policy based on the index options that we've chosen here? And it runs the data going all the way back to 2004. And if you give the policy 10 years to work, 98% of the time you're going to get 6 or better. If you give the policy 15 years to work, every single 15-year period, no matter when you bought the policy, if you held it for 15 years, every single one of those periods going back to 2004 achieved a 6% rate of return or better. Every single one, 100% of the time. So we have a policy here that isn't using, a variable rate of return. That's true. However, if you hold this for 15 years, which that's our funding period, we're paying premiums for 15 years, 100% of the rolling 15-year periods achieved a 6% credit or better. So going back to our market-linked portfolio, we've got a 42% likelihood of generating the exact same amount of income indexed for inflation as the life insurance policy. And yet we have to take on so much risk to do that. And what if tax rates increase in the future? So this is a 42% likelihood, assuming that tax rates don't change. If tax rates start to go up, or if tax brackets come down, all of a sudden the likelihood of generating the exact same amount of income indexed for inflation, net of fees and net of taxes, reduces drastically. Okay, so you're thinking this looks too good to be true. Well, there's definitely a downside. So let's talk about the downside. If we go back into one of these individual trials, let's just go back to our individual trials that gives us all the account values so we can see it. So again, this is the SEP that we're going to be looking at here. And what I want to show you is the difference in how the vehicle works, because the SEP is deferring money, number one, and number two, it doesn't have the same types of fees that the life insurance policy would have. And so what you would expect out of the SEP IRA is you would expect a higher account value during the accumulation phase. That's what we should expect. So let's go. We can still use this 349th trial. So this was the one that basically ended up with the same amount of dollars as the life insurance policy. But what we want to key in on is, let's go to, well, see, this the timing here is not right. I don't want to game the system. I'm not trying to game the system. We're retiring here in 2036. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pick a trial that doesn't have a big market drop right before, like this one. So we don't have any big market drops right before we retire, which that's important. So our total accumulation value, or the total amount of money that we have grown in 15, 16 years, is $2,354,521 in this particular trial. This is the 364th trial. So we've grown $2.3 million in this SEP IRA. Now that $2.3 million is fully taxable, so it's not a real $2.3 million, but $2.3 million is growing inside that SEP IRA at retirement, the year we retire. If we go to the life insurance policy, it's not going to look that good. It can't. So here's the year that we retire. How much money do we have in the contract? We have $1 million in the contract. So this is worlds different, right? 2.3. Now that 2.3 is fully taxable, so it's not a real 2.3. We've only got $1 million in the life insurance policy. So that's the drawback. The drawback is, if you are trying to grow the largest pot of money to be accessed all at one time, then you would be better off investing in some kind of tax deferred vehicle in the market, taking as much risk as you can possibly take. However, if your goal is tax efficient income, we've got more than twice as much money inside the SEP, $2.3 million, more than twice as much money. And yet, when we try to generate the same income, because there's going to be years where you experience a loss. We got a negative 17 here in 2038. We got a negative 21 in 2052. We got a negative 2 in 2044. Those 3 negative years make it so that this SEP IRA just simply does not compete with the IUL. So we're generating the exact same amount of dollars, and we're leaving behind $769,000 at life expectancy. $769,000 at life expectancy. Given one of the better trials that we've assumed here, we've got twice as much money at retirement. It's not all accessible. You do have to pay taxes on it. But the life insurance policy, we're taking less than half the risk, I would say. That's my opinion. Probably less than half the risk. There's no negative years. We have half as much money accumulated, and yet when we run out the income index for inflation, net of fees, net of taxes, we're still able to leave behind about $200,000 more dollars in the form of a death benefit than what's left over in the actual market-linked account. And so again, what's the downside? The downside is, if you're trying to grow the largest pot of money, the life insurance policy is not the place to do it. If you're trying to generate the best, highest, most tax efficient, safest income, the index life policy is nearly impossible to beat. And I would say it is impossible to beat if you are levelizing the playing field from a risk standpoint. So if we force the SEP to take the same amount of risk that we're taking in the life insurance policy, it can't compete from an income standpoint because even if we do take less risk in the SEP, it's still going to be linked to the market and you're still going to have losses. And those losses make it very difficult to generate income and still leave behind money. So hopefully this has been helpful. Does this mean that you should go out and purchase an index life policy? I would say no, that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to show you that if you are trying to generate tax efficient income for life the safest way possible, and you haven't explored a properly structured index universal life insurance policy, you probably should. You should at least look at what options exist and then get educated and make an educated, informed decision. So if you'd like to start that process, I'd encourage you to go to our website. You can find us at leveragedwm.com/contact-us, or just go to our homepage, leveragedwm.com. In the top right-hand corner, you can see Contact Us, along with a couple other tabs with some more information in there. But you can book an introductory call with our team. We'll talk to you about your goals, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, what comparisons you're trying to make. Maybe you're trying to compare it to an after-tax brokerage account. Maybe you're trying to decide between, where you should be saving your dollars. And if you haven't explored an index life policy, you probably should. And so check out our website, leveragedwm.com. You can check out the Contact Us page. You can book a call with us. It's a 15 to 20 minute call. We get a feel for what you're trying to do and see if we can help. And if we can, great. If we can't, we will still remain friends. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to my channel, like this video, click the bell so you get notifications, share it with some friends that might be considering or exploring this exact same topic. And then in the comments below, let me know what other comparisons you would like to see going forward. This has been Matthew Decker, Leverage Wealth Management. Until next time, take care.